Hello, welcome to the channel. This is the very first time I will be doing anything movie related here, so please, all of your critiques are very welcome. It is Booktober. Hey, it is Booktober. What better time to insert one of my favorite genres of movie within my channel if not today? I'm not a horror buff. Okay, I'm not a horror buff. I just really enjoy the genre. You can clearly see that within my channel because I'm playing horror games left and right all year round. But I generally think that horror is one of the most creative mediums to express a story ever. Anyway, what I have for you today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite zombie movies of all time, The Return of the Living Dead, Part 1. I have watched this movie countless of times. I watched it one more time for the making of this video. I'm going to quickly summarize the movie as fast as I can as to not spoil too much of it to you, but hey, heavy spoilers ahead. I will be talking about the entirety of the story. I'm gonna try to leave enough out such that whenever you watch it, there's still enough, there's enough dialogue, enough jokes, and enough for you to actually chew on whenever you're watching it by yourself. I don't know exactly what this is. It's not a review. I don't think I'm reviewing it. Is it an essay? Is it a... I just want to talk about it. I just want to ramble about this movie for a little bit, okay? Just indulge me for a little bit. It's one of my favorite ones. Especially because I believe this movie is one of the... I believe this movie is one of the very first zombie movies I've ever watched when I was a child. Like, I wasn't there for when the movie came out. I'm not that old. Like, much later on in the, early 2000s, the movie was, on TV again, for some reason. And then I watched it. And then it traumatized me for a little bit, and then I got over it, and then I watched the second one, and traumatized me again. Anyway, I was my childhood was very much, unguarded. No helmet, no knee pad. It was just like, yeah, no, just don't watch any porn, and I wouldn't hear from my parents. Alright, here we go. The Return of the Living Dead in 1985, go. Okay, let's do this fast because it's insanely warm where I live today, and I had only a fan as my only lifesaver, and I turned it off so my microphone would be a little less noisy for this. The movie starts with an outside shot of the medical supply warehouse where the portion of the movie will take place. 3 of the main characters are present: Frank, Freddy, and Bert, which is the boss and owner of the warehouse. Freddy is the new guy, and he's being tutored by Frank on how to work at the warehouse. Bert leaves because he has boss things to do, I guess, or boss leaves early. I don't know, but he's not gonna be here for much longer. I mean, especially if he was, the movie wouldn't be able to occur to begin with. You're gonna see that very soon. Anyway, Frank and Freddy are just going about, he's explaining, some jokes are being thrown. They store all sorts of medical supplies from prosthetic equipment, split dogs for veterinary in schools, and fresh cadavers for military ballistic tests and for medical schools.
Over here, Freddy's where we keep the fresh cadavers.
Which that kind of reminds me, I don't know if that's true or not, but that was that one story I saw of that guy that wanted to donate her grandma's body to medical schools, but then something happened and it ended up in the military complex, and she was strapped into a bunch of C4 and exploded. That's so horrible. I shouldn't laugh at that. That's horrible. Stop laughing. That's horrible. It's a tragedy. Don't laugh. Alright, after that, we cut to a band of misfits, 80s rock punk kids, painfully stereotypical, by the way. But that's the vibe of the movie. By the way, this movie has excellent soundtrack. I'm gonna probably say this exact thing so many times. Anyway, they're looking for somewhere to party, and Tina's, who's Freddy's girlfriend, says that he found a job at a warehouse, and apparently Freddy always knows where there's a place to party, so they kind of have to wait around for him. So they decide they wanted to go pick him up, but they need a car because it's kind of far, so they go to another friend of theirs, whose nickname is... I'm not entirely sure if I'm allowed to say that out loud on YouTube, but anyway. Okay, we cut back to the warehouse. Fred and Frank are working. Fred wants to chat a little bit, maybe to lighten the mood. And he asks Frank what is the weirdest thing he has ever seen in there. And then Frank says,
You see that movie? Night of the Living Dead.
He then proceeds to talk about a chemical that was developed by the military to spray on some undesirable plants. And then that chemical somehow leaked into the morgue area of some place, and then it made all of the bodies come alive again. And the news kind of came around, and like this guy made a movie about the thing, but then they got threatened to be sued by the military complex, so they had to change the facts around. And then while transporting the barrels full of that stuff, there was some kind of mix-up, and the barrels ended up in that very warehouse. So essentially, in this movie, zombies exist because the movie Night of the Living Dead exists, but apparently it's like this whole plot cover-up thing. And this is probably a reference because I believe the creator of this movie, or co-writer of this movie, like his name is called Russell Strainer, and I guess he had like some differences with George A. Romero about how zombies should zombie, I guess, and then they kind of split up, and I was like, I'm not gonna work on that anymore. He was like maybe unsatisfied with like the remakes, or anyway, and then he decided to make his own movies, and he called it The Return of the Living Dead. Anyway, don't quote me on that. Like I read it somewhere. Anyway, now we cut again. Now we're gonna talk about the meat and potatoes of this movie, the 2,4,5-trioxin, which might be one of the most overpowered chemicals in the zombie media ever. I mean, sure, as far as like zombie chemically induced making makes, I guess, right? Like, sure, you have the T viruses and all of that stuff, but like, anyway, you're going to see how broken it is in just a minute. Alright, so they have barrels of that stuff down in their basement because the United States Army messed up shipments or something or other. So obviously, these two grown-up children are gonna go downstairs and start fucking with it. Because why wouldn't you do that? Given the opportunity to play with dangerous chemicals, why not?
Wanna see him? They're down in the basement.
Just go poke the barrel full of dangerous chemicals that has been sitting down the basement unattended for like 15 years or more. That sounds like a good fun for the whole family.
Hey, these things don't leak, do they?
Leak? Hell no. These things were made by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Cannot show you the full thing because, you know, cannot show you like the full thing because because YouTube copyright, but trust me, like, this movie is chock full of great soundtrack. Anyway, I did like a little bit of research, and apparently it was common to make fun of the US Army in the 70s and 80s, largely due to like Vietnam War, like immense unpopularity, and like general loss of public faith and negative perception of the military. So they're always making like, oh yeah, there's like military grade, and it's like, yeah, no, it's garbage. It's pretty much what it is. I'm very sorry if I made the joke unfunny by explaining it. Alright, now here is where the zombie part of the zombie movie actually starts. Now with like a big TV emergency alert system, like a chaos and broad daylight. Simply two idiots and one tank of dangerous chemicals. Alright, we quickly jump from the warehouse to a fancy house where Colonel and his wife lives. I forgot the name of this colonel, I was gonna call him Colonel. I don't know, Colonel Rhodes, Colonel Kentucky Fried, I don't know. Anyway, so from what I understand, he lives in the particular area because the government kind of knows where the tanks are, somewhat. Like, they know they are in a particular area. So this guy is stationed there because it's the most likely area that those tanks would show up. And that's his job. His job is to find where they are and retrieve them, hopefully. Then we cut back to Freddy's friends. The last member of the Misfits shows up. They drive to the warehouse and decide to wait for Freddy's shift to end. And what better place to wait for a friend than the local cemetery? Because that's what punk kids did back in the 80s. I'm very sure of it.
You mean that cemetery? Oh, let's do that.
Okay, we cut back to the warehouse again after the gas leak. Frank and Fred passed out after inhaling copious amounts of the gas. The body that was inside is no longer there. More on that later. It leaked everywhere and over everything. This is where things start to get weird they hear noises from somewhere inside the warehouse and realize the split dogs are alive again.
What was that?
Sounds like a dog.
And even the display cases with butterflies, like anything that was alive once is now alive again. Or rather, not alive, but reanimated. And that is when they start hearing noises from the cold storage. And they realize they have a really big problem in their hands. And this is why this chemical is so dangerous. Because anything, insects, animals, humans, anything that was once alive, doesn't matter the level of damage in their bodies. Like, a split dog in half of its body, doesn't matter. The gas brings it back up. That is so broken. That is so insanely broken. Oh my god. Anyway, more on that later. But in fact, the second movie touches on that a little bit more. There's a few inconsistencies between the first and the second. It just feels like the second was kind of like a remake of the first one, but they kind of joke about it too. Anyway, that's gonna have to wait for another video.
Bert, Frank, we have a little problem.
Alright, they decide to call the boss so he can decide how to handle the situation. Then we jump back to the Misfits again. They're having yet another casual conversation.
Do you ever fantasize about being killed?
Like I said, normal, everyday, young adult conversations. One thing, and then, one thing leads to another, and oh my god, okay. I'm gonna have to 100% censor all this. Alright, we're back to the warehouse. We're discussing about what happened and what to do about it. Then they mentioned the movie Night of the Living Dead, where to dispose of the dead, they must destroy the brain. They open the cold storage, and the reanimated cadaver rushes out screaming, "Brains!" And yes, you heard it right, brains. Have you ever thought about where the idea of zombies craving brains come from? That's right. This movie coined the trope, cementing it as one of the eternal classic movies ever. You might never have watched it, but you certainly have seen the trope of zombies craving brains, and you have this movie to thank for. Alright, they struggle with the zombie for a little bit, they bash their skull in with a pickaxe, and to their surprise, it did not dispose of the zombie. In summary, for this movie, for zombies created by this chemical, you can do nearly anything to them. Nearly anything. More on that later. But like, cutting them in pieces, bashing their skulls open, it doesn't matter. They will come after you. Every little piece is going to still be alive, well, reanimated or whatever. It's like one of the first instances of an actual unstoppable force. Or, well, nigh unstoppable. Anyway, should I hop on the trend of like, you would not survive, insert movie here? Like, I would love to talk about more of these movies. Alright, Bert recalls a friend of his that works as a mortician nearby. There's a cemetery, there's a mortician right by it. Because that mortician friend of his obviously has a crematorium. So if they can't chop it, if they can't kill it, might as well burn it. Maybe the holy flames of fire shall purify it. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. Anyway, they show up at the mortician's place, and they're trying to like play dumb, like, yeah, no, it's just like a bunch of rabid animals, whatever, right? Then the mortician's like, yo, dude, like, what the fuck? Do we want to burn animals? That's cruel, right? It's like we gotta put them down first, right? It's the humane thing to do. And then he goes like, all right, dude, so I need you to shut the fuck up about it. And then like they show him a hand, and a hand like grabs like his ankles, and anyway, he gets absolutely terrified about it. And it was like, all right, cool, I'll do it, but you owe me something. And I was like, all right, I owe you something. From this point out, we're gonna be jumping from A to B very fast. Okay, so We cut back to the Misfits again, and Tina, Freddy's girlfriend, is worried about him and thinks it's just about time he leaves work. So she heads to the warehouse, where we get a big establishing shot of the whole place and like how creepy and scary it looks at night. Like, you know, that like this movie is like painfully 80s. Like, you know, like I look at it and I just keep thinking about like Judge Dredd, minus the sci-fi part, but like, you know, like a little bit dystopian looking. Anyway, so she arrives at the place, she rings the doorbell, and nobody answers because they're all into the mortician. Now we cut back again to the mortician, and it shows them like throwing the body parts to burn to a crisp. And that is where the story should end. That's... I love this movie so much. But we're talking about 2,4,5-trioxin here. Like, it's one of the most stupid chemicals ever created in fiction, in my opinion. Because when you burn the body parts that are completely doused in that stuff, well, the smoke from burning the body parts is also 2,4,5-trioxin. And then you see the big shot of like the chimney just sending smoke into the atmosphere and then causing like, you know, water molecules to pool and make actual rain clouds. And as rain starts to fall, carrying in the chemicals, they fall into the soil near the cemetery. Like, this movie is like a perfect example of escalation. You know, it's just like, yeah, it was bad. Okay, it became worse. Okay, now we have a problem. You know what I mean? And you see how the story flows on a narrative that makes sense? Because like every bad thing that happens has been the decision of a character. So it's not like the characters were just there and the zombie movie happened, right? It's like, you know, Brad Pitt on 28 Days Later. Sorry, 20... What? No, it's World War Z. What the hell? Anyway, like, you know, he was there. He was like an important guy, retired. Zombie apocalypse happens, and he was just there in the middle of it, and the movie shows his perspective of it. No. This happens because the characters are idiots. Due to the rain, Tina decides to head inside the warehouse to protect her from like the acid rain, whatever. Then we cut back again to the mortuary and we see that all the parts have been cremated. Relief washes over Bert, thinking he escaped potential legal troubles over the whole ordeal. But something is wrong with Fred and Frank. They were feeling sick because they were completely sprayed with chemical earlier. So they decide to call for paramedics.
We have 2 men poisoned here. Well, no, we don't know what kind of poison.
And then we have like establishing shot of the cemetery where you can hear like hundreds of reanimated corpses waking up underground, trapped, and trying to escape. Okay, we cut back to Tina again, who is in the warehouse completely unaware of what transpired earlier and all the danger lurking outside. She calls for Freddy while cautiously exploring the warehouse, where eventually she finds herself in the basement, the starting point of the whole movie. Remember the barrel that had a corpse inside earlier that they thought melted? Well, meet Tarman. Quite possibly one of the most iconic scenes in the whole movie. Zombies reanimated by 2,4,5-trioxin, not only they're capable of speech, they are also smarter than the average zombie, capable of solving basic problems, as seen Tarman using tools to rip open the closet door that Tina was hiding inside. Anyway, the Band of Misfits arrive at the warehouse looking for Tina, just as Tarman was nearly successful in catching her, sadly to the demise of suicide. Alright, back at the mortuary, the paramedics finally arrive and start examining Fred and Frank. They get baffled because they can't explain what's happening to the two of them. Their bodies is room temperature and they're stiff, no blood pressure, no pulse.
No blood pressure. No pulse. What do you have? 70.
70 what?
70 degrees.
By all accounts, they're no longer alive. And you see, that's the other problem with this chemical. Anything it touches dies. It's that dangerous. Not only it reanimates dead things, it makes alive things die. And then it reanimates them again. Which might be a little bit redundant, but anyway, chemical got a zombie, I guess. Anyway, the Misfits, they boarded the basement, and nobody knows where Freddy is. Then they decide to run back to the cemetery for some reason, and then we have one of the coolest zombie... And then we have one of the coolest zombie awakening scenes ever put to film.
We're gonna have to swim to get over there. Damn it. The fuck was that?
I wish I could play this in entirety to you, but I like money and I want my video monetized. Anyway, go watch the movie. Okay. This music is awesome, it's iconic, and he had a comeback much later in a Call of Duty Zombie cinematic where they were referencing Romero and also this movie. You know, the one that they had, like, you know, like the actress for like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the Danny Trejo, and you know, it's like, it's all connected. You don't understand. If you never watched as many zombie movies as I did, it's all connected. All zombie media kind of references each other a little bit. Okay, not all of them, but anyway, you get what I mean. You back to the mortuary. Right, back to the mortuary where the paramedics are still discussing Fred and Frank's situation. They hear a commotion at the front door in the chapel connected to the mortuary, where Spider, Scuzz, and Tina made it looking for safety. Casey and Chuck ran towards the warehouse where they were just in moments ago, narrowly escaping the dead that were pursuing them. The paramedics decided to go back to the ambulance to call for advice on Fred and Frank's situation, but what they didn't know is that the zombies were waiting to ambush them outside. You understand why the zombie apocalypse is so dangerous? They talk, they know how to use tools, and they plan. That is so dangerous. The Misfit... Okay, so anyway, the Misfits tell Bert about the cemetery incident and the tar man inside the warehouse. This is when they realize the situation has escalated out of control. Casey and Chuck find a phone inside the warehouse and try to call the police, where they are rudely interrupted by a window-flying zombie, by the way. Bert and the rest of them decide they need to get into a car and get out of there. Like, the smartest decision made all night. Okay, Tina finally reunites with Fred, who is now only alive because of the 2,4,5-trioxin in his system. He just didn't fully turn yet, but we'll get there. The mortician goes outside to get his car, but notices the paramedics are dead and had a close encounter with one of them, so he runs back inside and tells everybody that they are pretty much surrounded, and they decide to finally call the police. All the phones are dead. Okay, at this moment, the zombies start to try and break in, and they scurry about to try and fortify the place. Seeing the state of their friend, Scuzz and Spider pressure Bert to tell them what happened. And at this moment, the mortician takes a look at Fred, realizing he is entering stages of rigor mortis.
Looks like rigor mortis is setting in.
While trying to, like, defend the place, one zombie gets in and bites this guy, you know, and bites Scuzz, and then they manage to rip him off the window, and then they bring him to the mortician's table, and they start talking to that thing. I don't know exactly why, but that thing scared me a lot. I don't know. There was something about that question and that answer that just sent chills, like, because I absorbed that question, and I was like, oh shit, is it painful to die? I don't want to die. Oh god. And then that's it. Sleepless nights. Well, in any case, I think that is like possibly one of the scariest sentences to ever be put into a parody movie. Because, like, just think about it. You're blissfully dead, suddenly you're jolted awake, but you aren't alive, but you aren't alive in the normal sense. Every cell in your body is still decaying, and you can feel all of it. Like, my heebies just got a dose of GBs. Like, yikes. Jinkies. Zoinks, even. Bert and crew decide to move Fred and Frank to a different room to quarantine them while they think of a way to escape. Tina, being the good girl that she is, decides to stay with her boyfriend to the bitter end. They ponder their options, run, barricade themselves, whatever. Shortly after, Fred and Frank are nearly fully transformed. Fred then remembers the nutritional values of gray matter and asks Tina for a little nibble. Right. Hearing Tina scream, Bert and the others rush back to her aid and safely rescue her from Fred momentarily. Frank, holding on to the last bit of humanity he had, manages to slip through and decides to take his fate on his own hands. Godspeed, Frank. Okay, on the rush to block Fred from leaving the room, they accidentally drop a heavy furniture on the mortician's foot. He claims it is broken, and he can no longer run.
I can't walk, much less run.
They spot a police car with the engine still running. The plan is to bring the car near the door so they can make a quick escape. Their plan fails, of course, because the dead outside are too numerous, so they have to leave Ernie, the mortician, and Tina behind. The two eventually hide in a ceiling crawl space. Okay, Bert and Spider cut through the horde to make their way back to the medical warehouse, joining Casey and Chuck. Right, they remember there is a working phone in the basement. They quickly deal with the tarman and reach the phone near the chemical tanks. First, they call the police, but they are already getting overwhelmed by the horde. Then they call the number and the set of the tanks to call for the military, reaching back to the colonel that we spoke all the way back into the beginning of the movie. After learning that the containers have been breached and the dead are walking, he just simply orders a nuclear strike. The end. I mean, if you stop to think about it, that's like, yeah, like what are they going to do? Like, you know, what else can they do? They need to contain it, right? And then like the movie has a little bit of like a few shots at the end showing like, oh yeah, maybe like the fires and the smoke and the rain are going to do it again or something. But they essentially they leave the fate of that movie untold. Will there be more zombies? Would there not be more zombies? Did the nuke did what I had to do? Anyway, they kind of leave it a little bit open. Alright, so to be quite honest with you, I think that this particular ending to the movie is as good as any because it's meant to be satire. This is a movie that is meant to be satire using the zombies and 80s culture as its main focal point for the satire, so... And not to mention, as I said, the whole situation with this particular chemical 2,4,5-trioxin is so bad. It's so unbelievably unstoppable that how would you, like, you know, go from that? The thing is that they expand on it a little bit more in the sequel. We'll get there in a different video. Don't worry about it, but. Another thing that I wanted to talk about that I didn't while summarizing the movie, and I didn't do it for a reason. It's because there is quite a lot of nudity involved. That is also why I left some particular scenes that I didn't even talk about it. Not because like they're not part of the movie, but it's like, or they detract from the movie. It's because technically speaking, they feel a little bit more like fan service of some kind than something that will completely alter the plot if I talk about it or not. That's going to be a nice little nugget of a movie for you to watch whenever you're watching this movie on your own. One thing that wasn't very clear is what if the zombie bites you? Because normally when we're talking about zombies, like if they bite you, you become one of them, right? Like you die, but you become one of them. In this movie, this happens only once. I don't know if it depends on the circumstances. I don't know exactly what needs to happen. If just the bite, does every single character that got bitten, well, or rather they got like their brains munched on, would then eventually become a zombie? Because, sorry, and I said that happened only once. No, that happened 3 times actually. Many characters died, but only 3 shown to come back. One was trash. I'm not gonna show her, at least not from the neck below, because she's like very naked. And then like the police officers that came after, like, you know, there was even a gag that they show up at the scene, then they get tackled by all the zombies, and then they're zombies themselves, like, you know, also in the pile of zombies doing stuff. But so my question is like, how much of you needs to be left, or how, like, would the zombies themselves have enough toxin left on their, like, blood, saliva, slime, whatever, you know? Especially because we're talking about, like, zombies that came out of a cemetery, which were previously embalmed, meaning they probably don't have any blood whatsoever left on their veins, right? It's just like the whatever fluid and embalming fluids that need to be in there, I suppose. So what seems to happen more often in this movie is that after the initial, after the initial rainfall that carries in the toxins that raise the dead, their numbers don't seem to just grow exponentially as normal zombie movies go. It's more like, there was those initial ones and then some come back, some don't, I guess. I'm not entirely sure. And in this particular series of movies, I think there's like 4, 5 maybe. And but trust me, the third movie of this series was the last good one. I don't exactly, I mean, I know what happened, because like the same people that worked on the first and the second one weren't working on the other ones, so any good franchise tends to devolve after that. Also, by all means, do me a favor, tell me in the comments down below if I did a good job at summarizing the movie and trying to, like, explain how things went. It's the first time that I'm doing this. It's the first time that I'm talking about, like, a movie that I really enjoy on this channel, so by all means, critiques are necessary and appreciated. Just be gentle with me, I suppose. And of course, if the reception to this video was good enough, I'm going to make more of these eventually. There is, of course, the second movie to cover. I'm gonna start working on that, like, as soon as possible. But, like, there are many movies that I want to talk about that quite a lot of people never heard of. There's, like, this Canadian movie called The Void that I watched specifically because it is chock full of practical effects. It's all about, like, cosmic horror and stuff. Man, there's, like, so much good stuff out there that it's not exactly mainstream. It's not like, Avengers level mainstream that people never ever would even stumble across. I mean, there are many movies that I never watched that are, like, considered all-time classics. I mean, I kind of have to up my game a little bit. Now, something that this movie never did that I would like to see, like, no installment of this movie did, and I really would like to see, was like a more wide-scale spread of that particular toxin, like just going in everywhere, like seeing roadkill, like, stand up and walk again and stuff like that, like real, like, literally just let the 2,4,5 trioxin, let it rip, you know what I mean? And just go, like, crazy, like, on an entire state. That would be awesome. But anyway, that's like wishful thinking, because, like, the way I see it, this franchise is dead, completely dead. As far as sequels, I don't trust any sequel to come out and be good, because I recently watched one of the sequels, like, beyond the third movie, just to remind myself why I didn't like them. And it's like inconsistencies within the original 3. Like, this, there's none of the, I don't think even the writers are the same, and man, it's just, I'll talk about it. I will talk about it some other time, not right now. This video is already long enough, so I'm gonna end it here. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed listening to me summarize and ramble about this movie for a little bit. I purposefully summarized it as fast as I could, as to not spoil any of the jokes for you, like, still leave most of, like, the comedy and the dark comedy intact for you to enjoy whenever you watch this. Whether there's a streaming service or ye going to sail the high seas to find this movie, that's up to you. I don't care. Just go watch it. It's awesome. Leave me in the comments down below if you have any recommendations of movies for me to watch, maybe even do another one of these. And hopefully I'll be seeing you beautiful you in the next one. Bye bye.